right. You notice a patient becoming upset with the physician during rounds. As the medical team begins to leave, the patient asks for you to stay behind. They tell you, I feel like the doctor never listens to me and they just do what they want without asking me first. And rank each of the appropriate response options. Okay, first, tell the physician what the patient said and suggest that they address the patient's concerns. 2, ask the patient why they feel like they're not being heard. Tell the patient the doctor is like this with everyone, it's nothing against you. Ask the nurse if the patient has been irritable recently or complaining when the team is not present. Tell the patient you understand how they feel and share a story about how you sometimes feel like people don't listen to you as well. Okay, I'm going to look over these again. So the patient feels like the doctor doesn't listen to them and they just do what they want without asking them first. Okay. Alright, well, I definitely wouldn't tell the patient that the doctor's like this with everyone, it's nothing against you, because that's just going to drive them apart further. So I'm going to put that at like 4 or 5. I also wouldn't put asking the nurse if the patient has been irritable very high. It seems pretty unprofessional and not really getting to the root of the problem. These other 3 are going to be nearer to the top. I think I'm going to put ask the patient why they feel like they're not being heard as number 1, so most appropriate, because you want to get to the root of the problem and see why the patient feels that way. Then second, I might tell the physician, just because if they're unaware, they might not even be aware that they're kind of ignoring the patient, and so if you let them keep behaving that way, then it'll just continue. So I'll put that second. I'll put telling the patient about a similar scenario that you've gone through as third, because that will kind of establish a relationship with them and they might open up to you more. Then I will put asking the nurse as fourth and telling the patient the doctor's like that with everyone as last. Okay. Next, you are having dinner with several family members when your parents start asking about your sibling's marital status. They ask your sibling a series of questions. What's going on, why they haven't been successful, and other details. Your sibling begins to look uncomfortable with the questions. So what should we do? Ask family members if they could share their own answers or challenges to the questions they're asking. Respectfully divert the conversation to a new topic of discussion. Tell your family members to back off on questioning and that it's not their business. Join in on the questioning to make your sibling respond. Acknowledge to family members that these are difficult questions that may not be the best time to discuss. Well, we're not going to join in, so that's number 5. There's some other ones that are pretty good, though. Right off the bat, I think acknowledging to family members and discussing with them that it's not the best time would be the most appropriate. So I'm going to go ahead and put that as number 1. The other 3 are kind of in the middle. I think number 2 would be respectfully diverting the conversation. That sounds like something that I would probably actually do. And then I don't think asking family members to share their own answers is very realistic nor something that I would do in this situation. So I'm going to put that as number 4, and then telling family members to back off as number 3. Kind of more neutral, but you could probably say it in a nicer way. Okay, you and a friend are studying for a big exam for one of your undergrad classes when they begin to complain about the course. Their parents have threatened to stop paying their tuition if they don't get an A in the course. Your friend tells you they purchased some medication off a friend who said it would help them study, and they offer you some. So 1, offer to help your friend find alternative ways to cope with the stress of the course and family. Tell your friend no, you don't need that to study. State that you'll just take one to see what it does. Ask your friend if it's necessary to take the medication and whether that's a good idea. Acknowledge your friend's situation and discuss with them the challenges they're facing in and outside of the course. Okay, I'm going to put that one as number 1 because right as I read it, I was thinking kind of ahead of time that's what I would want to do. So that's going to be most appropriate. Definitely least appropriate is just taking one and seeing what it does. I don't think that's the best thing to do in this scenario. Let's see. I'm going to have number 2 be offering to help your friend. Of course, you want to be there for them after acknowledging the situation. I'm going to put number 3 as asking if it's necessary to kind of force your friend to take a step back and think about the choice that they're making. And then I'll put number 4 as just telling your friend no, which I would tell them no anyway, but it doesn't really ask them to address their problems, and it's just kind of blowing it off. According to your patient's blood sugar logs, he's always been within his goals. However, his other tests suggest his diabetes is poorly controlled, and you suspect he's been recording false numbers. Ask how the patient has been taking his blood sugar and documenting his numbers. Ask the patient what problems he has with managing his diabetes, if any. Request he be transferred to a different pharmacist due to lack of compliance. Tell the patient you suspect some of the numbers he provided may not be accurate based on the tests collected today, or contact a family member or caregiver to ask about his diabetes management at home. I'm not going to request that he be transferred, because if I see a patient with a problem, I'm not going to just pawn him off on somebody else. Let's see. I kind of struggle with it if I want to ask the patient or not, because if you suspect that he's already not being completely honest, he might not be honest if you just ask him face to face. These are a little more tricky. I don't know if I want to contact a family member or ask the patient first. I don't want to put telling the patient he suspects some of his numbers are not accurate as number 1 for sure. I don't want to come off like accusing the patient of anything, so I'm going to put that as number 4. I don't think that's an appropriate way to address this. I think I'll actually start off by asking the patient what problems he has with managing his diabetes, because that'd be the first thing I would do, and then I would kind of maybe utilize some of these other strategies. If he seems to brush that off, I would kind of maybe keep pressing a little bit after that, but that's the first thing I would do. And then I think I would contact the family member or caregiver after that if he still isn't really getting me anywhere, but I'm pretty certain that he's not controlling it very well. So that leaves asking the patient how he's been taking his recordings as number 3. You go to the store to pick up a few things you forgot for our presentation. While standing in line at checkout, someone approaches you and asks if they can cut in front of you. However, there are already 5 people behind you. They mention that their children are at home sick and they're trying to get back as quickly as possible. Letting the person go in front of you will definitely make you late for your presentation. Ask the people behind you if they'd mind having a person go in front of you. Acknowledge your situation and let them go in front of you. Tell them no and that they need to get in line like all the others. Ask the person what's wrong with their children and determine whether they can cut based on their response. Tell them that you are also in a rush and ask if they could cut in front of the person behind you. Some of these are really strange. I'm not going to ask the people what's wrong with their children. That's really inappropriate. That's number 5. Let's see. This is particularly difficult for me because I would definitely keep the people behind me in mind when I was doing this, so I'd be in a really awkward situation at this point. I would not ask if they could cut in front of the person behind me. That is also really awkward, especially for the person behind me. So that's number 4. I wouldn't tell them no and they need to get in line, so I'm going to put that as number 3 just because I do not see myself doing that at all. So it's either acknowledge your situation and let them go, or ask the people behind me if they'd mind having the person go in front of me. Honestly, I'd probably just let them go in front of me just to alleviate the awkwardness of the situation, and I doubt the people behind me would even notice or care that much, so I would just let them go, and I guess I'd be late to my presentation, but I think that's what I would do. A nurse interrupts you during rounds about a patient on the floor not covered by your service. They tell you a family member noticed that the infusion rate for a medication was incorrect on the pump. The nurse has asked you to talk with them. When you enter the room, the several family members are very upset with the situation. Apologize to the patient and to the family about the error. Discuss with the patient and family about potential complications from infusing the medication at the wrong dose. Leave the room to allow the patient and family to process what's occurred because the medication error was not directly your fault. Ask the patient and family what questions they have about the error and identify the potential causes of the error and consider ways to avoid it in the future. So I think last I am going to put leaving the room and allowing them to process, because not taking responsibility is never the number 1 thing to do. So don't just leave the room and leave them in there. And then 4th, I'm going to put discussing potential complications, because although I'm sure the family wants to know what could happen, it's not number one on their mind. They probably just want to know why it happened. So I'm not going to go with discussing complications right off the bat.